gosh, Jeff, we're here.
We are multiple
Finally.
tech issues, but we have made it finally today and got
Well,
it all off and running. It's always the story of my life is having the technology issues. It's when it works, it's great. When it doesn't work, it's not so great.
that's really true, and here we are from that standpoint. So right this minute, I'm trying to get the chat up, and I've got the circle going around and around and around. So
Ah,
hopefully that will come on soon because I'd really love to know who's here with us and have them be able to type into the chat that we can see here. But if nothing else, I have another computer that I can fire up on the side and be able to see chat from that
get through that.
standpoint. So. Yeah, so we'll just plan B it if we can't get it to come up in the main screen on Restream. Restream and we are not getting along in the last couple weeks, so we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, this is a big week. We are talking staged. It's our second week of planning, so I'm going to just be quiet, write it down, and let you jump in and start talking, planning targets and working the plan. Oh my! So here we are.
You were quiet last week though.
I was really quiet last week, but I'm not that kind of quiet this time.
Not
Yeah.
quite as quiet as that. You've gotten your voice back, so you're off.
Yes.
Was it
It's a good thing.
drinking a lot of hot tea and honey or whiskey?
Um, all of the above by the time it was over with,
Okay.
probably by Wednesday, I had my voice pretty much back.
Okay.
But if I talk too much, it still gets me in trouble. So
Still goes
I
away?
have to watch. Yeah. What
No,
did you just say?
it still goes away if you talk too much?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, I'm glad you're back and you've found your voice and back to join us again this week. So this week's another exciting thing. So last week we talked a little bit about taking a look at 2022 and how your 2022 was shaping up as part of our kind of planning process over this month. And we talked about going into fourth quarter, how it's a great time to really start assessing what went well last. I'll say last year, but really 2022. We're
yeah.
almost through the end of the year, and at least here in Ohio, it is frigid, and we're supposed to have the dreaded S word potentially tomorrow.
Yeah, no
Snow.
joke.
Uh,
Sorry.
so it's gotten very cold here. But, part of today, what we wanted to talk about is part of this planning and how do you set targets for yourself? Or Rhonda, you had typed while I was playing Rhonda last week, aspirations, which I really liked, talking about what are your aspirations for 2023 and what do those
Hmm.
start to look like? And there's a bunch of different ways that you can set those. But last week we talked about outlining your successes, your challenges, what were your opportunities, and challenging everyone to kind of fill up a piece of paper with all of those successes and celebrate the small stuff, not just the large things that we tend to always think about celebrating, but really some of those small things that happen because all those small steps throughout the year lead to big results. Um,
They sure do.
as
Hmm.
a part of that, some of that is how do you start to set some targets, goals, aspirations for 2023, which is always a big question this time of the year. And then the bigger component of that is what do you do once you have that in place? And that's where we get to the work and the plan. Because I think so often it's easy to go into a fourth quarter plan, put together a plan and get some goals and targets. But if you don't have the right behaviors and things set in that plan to create potentially some new habits on the way that you need to work. And that's one of the ones that we'll talk about, not next week, but the week after, if I'm remembering correctly. Because next
Actually, it that's 3 weeks
3 weeks. Okay, three
because
weeks out.
because somebody's going to be out of the country next week. So we're interrupting our planning process for an interview. But the cool thing is we're interrupting the planning process, and it's funny. I was going to do this at the end, but we'll just do it now because we're doing it. Um, Next week we're going to have a guest who I'm really excited to have with me since you're bailing on me, Jeff,
Yep.
for a really good reason. Um, my friend Teresa McCloy, who just wrote a book called Do What Matters. She is the creator of the Real Life Process. And the Real Life Process is a 90-day planning process. And she has a whole concept. And to be honest with you, her process is what I use in planning personally myself. So she's going to be with us to talk about that part. Then when you come back, um, we have 2 more weeks in planning. The first one is I think about setting your goals, and then the second, I'm sorry to say, I can't tell you this off the top of my head. And then the last one is about the habits that you need to
Habits.
create. Yeah.
Can you tell I'm kind of on vacation mode right now? Everything's kind of mashing and running together.
Oh, great.
Yes, it's one of those weeks. I've got the countdown on. There's only a few days remaining. But yeah, planning and targets. So a lot of this is to get us back on track, so we don't veer too far off of what we were supposed to talk about today.
Yeah, let's stay focused.
A lot of this is really on, setting targets and plans, aspirations, and I'd love to know, kind of, Rhonda, how do you do that, or what does a typical plan or aspiration look like for you on an annual basis?
Um, I'm really kicking myself because I had my 2022 aspirations all written on my lovely frosted door that, was, but I cleaned it off for the big open house last weekend. So now I'm like, um, the way I set my aspirations is, first of all, I'm going to go back to the Teresa thing because in her planning process, she talks about areas of focus, and it's very holistic. It's your whole life, not just your business. Um, and so I focus on my entire life. What is it that I want to create? But it's also about, where do I want my business to be by the end of the year? And in order to know the answer to that question, I have to be able to do the visioning. I have to look at what's going on in the world, what's going on in my industry, what's going on around me that might impact me, and not only impact me from the standpoint of, oh, gee, that's a challenge that I'm going to need to, think about a SWOT analysis. What are the threats? But what are the potential opportunities, because there's new things happening around and I need to anticipate that. And how is that going to be a potential opportunity or something that I need to be aware of so that I can address it proactively instead of um, being blindsided by something. So the big thing in our area is Intel coming in, um, because it's just huge. The housing things that are going on around us, the support businesses that are going to be needed, how construction is going to be impacted by this whole thing, the implications of this huge industrial change in our area. The ripple effect is just momentous. It absolutely is. And so as a small business owner, I need to be looking at, what does that mean for me? And how am I going to respond to that? As you can tell, you got me on a soapbox. So, and as a good visionary, I can talk about those kinds of things all day long. But I want you to talk about planning. So now that you know how I think aspirationally, at 50,000 feet, because it's where I like to live.
Yep. And a lot of that is what I hear from a lot of times visionaries. They've got the big plan and they're looking out at the horizon at all the things that might impact their business, and what to do and what to pivot and what to think about and what to focus on. One of the things that I really do like that you talked about is looking at things holistically, just beyond your business, what you want to get out of life in general, what you want to get out of your business, what are you trying to create for your business, which I think is really important. But some of that, where the rubber really meets the road, it's good to have these big strategies and aspirations, is how are you going to start to measure what success looks like and what direction is north? So often, we don't think about what direction is north. It's kind of, as a small business owner, it's easy to, aim, fire, not even aim, sometimes just fire a buckshot and see, what works and what doesn't work. And part of this target planning is being really intentional about where are you focusing your time, energy, capital to meet those goals.
Yes.
Which is such a key, and that means for every business owner, you've got to really look at what you've been doing with a critical eye to determine what's working, what's getting you closer to those goals, what's detracting you from those goals, or things that you may have missed or not missed last year, and what does that need to look like for you. And some of those, I always tell people, break those down into manageable tasks, right? If I was talking to an owner a couple of weeks ago that said they wanted to grow revenue by $100,000 next year, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. It's such a big number, and we started having this conversation, and it's like, okay, well, let's break down how many sales based on your average sale would that be? What would you need to sell in 2023? X number of these items.
Yeah.
Well, when you start to break that down further on, okay, how many of those do you need a month? How many do you need a week? That number isn't this ginormous number anymore. You've got kind of a rudimentary kind of target, right? You know what direction's north. If I need to sell 3 of these product or service offerings a month, you've got a way to start to look at, okay, if I can do these 3 things per month. And then where it really gets interesting is through experience and time, being able to break that down to how many activities lead to those results. So if you think about from a sales perspective, if for you to sell 3 of your service offerings or products, it takes you, let's say it's a 30-day sales cycle, and you have a 30% close rate, you can back into how many people, potential clients, do you need to be talking to or networking or connecting into certain groups? How many of those do you need to do per month, per week to get to that end result? So I think that, one of the key things with the targets that I would, like to do is look out what are those activities that are going to get you closer to the goals. The really good one that I can use personally, when I set this business up in 2019, I spent a lot of time in networking groups, which is where you and I met.
It is. This is true.
It is a lot of different networking groups, paid and not paid, and everything else. And when I look back, it was purposeful, but casting a very wide net, because I was just getting started 3.5 years ago. So it was important for me to really get out and connect with the community of business owners that I wanted to work with. What happened 2019 into 2020 for me, I started assessing what was getting me closer to some of the goals that I had for the business. And I started opting out of certain things, not because they were bad groups or not great people. I met a lot of great people that I still talk to today, but I started scaling back a little bit more. That, okay, my name's, my company's name is out on the marketplace, but this isn't driving me closer to my goals for my business. So some of the things that did, I doubled down on. There were other things I stopped doing and attending.
And that's so important to know, where are the places that my customers hang out? Because until you learn that, you're spending your time in a lot of places that are not going to get you that ROI for your ROE.
Yep, exactly.
Not the way I put that in
One
there.
way that you weave that in, so part of that was part of my planning going into 19 into 20. The other lesson that I had learned, I felt really good because my calendar was filled with appointments and one-on-ones from people I met in networking. So that was one component. The other thing that I learned was that I had my schedule opened way too open for people to book time with me just for networking and one-on-one follow-ups, just to get to know each other, which is all, is really critical, but you've got to balance that with running a business. So going,
Wait, you got to actually do the work?
yeah, right.
Okay.
So
Got it.
going into 2020, I made some adjustments where I had only opened up my schedule for 1 day a week for networking one-on-ones, so that I would allow basically 5 days to be opened up for potential customers to book time with me, because I was too booked up on networking type events where prospective clients were having trouble connecting with me. And these are all part of, that setting targets and assessing where you're at. So I've got a pretty good idea of what groups I need to be a part of and participate in, for me and for my business. I've got an idea of how many people I should be meeting and talking with. Doesn't mean that they all lead to sales, but I've got a good idea of who my customer is, who I want to be talking to, who I want to be in front of. And then, for me, it's been learning to protect my time around just the networking type one-on-ones that people just want to meet to get to know you, which is valuable. But, at times those meetings for me sometimes are scheduled 2 to 3 weeks out, because I'm being very deliberate about protecting my time. So those are some things that you can do. I've also seen business owners, when they set targets and kind of start to break this down into activities, I'm sure we'll talk about this in the upcoming weeks, is tracking what those activities that they've done and what results those are leading to throughout the year. So as you figure this out, and maybe you don't have it figured out now, which is okay, but if you think that you've got to meet with X number of people or go to X number of conferences, trade shows, whatever, get that set up going into next year. And if you're diligent enough to continue to track and have the discipline against what you think you need to be doing, you should be able to trace that back to the results. Or maybe some of the targeted activities are a little off. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing that says that you can't change, your activities and tactics in February, March, April, May, June, July, whenever, in 2023, to meet kind of where you're at and where you're going, which is one of the things that I always talk about. You've got to create that plan, and the plan's got to be actionable. So what are the targets that you're going to start the year with, and then work that plan as it gets set up. Are you meeting those criteria of whatever it is that you've set? Are they working? Are they not working? Do you need to make adjustments? These are all that go into, working that plan once it's set.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to. There's like a million questions I have, but we're also having some problems that we're live on your stream, but we're not live on mine for some stupid reason I cannot figure out.
Oh
Clearly,
no.
Restream and I are going to have a conversation after we're done here. But if people, well, and they can't tell because they can't see us. So I'm typing to someone. Feel free to keep going. Oh, I do want to talk to you more about setting targets, though, and I'm going to use the term, as a small business that's in the growth stages, um, sometimes you set a target and you find out that the target you set is really not where the market is going. And what do you do when you need to pivot a little bit? So you got this plan for the year, but then you start realizing, well, this isn't exactly the way I thought it was going to turn out, but the opportunities over here. And I really want to talk to you about, okay, so how do you identify where the opportunity is that you need to put that target toward? And that's A. B is, what if where somebody wants where they want you to go is not where your business needs to go?
Oh, those are really,
I thought
really
I'd just, really nail it right to the wall on that one.
Yeah, really good question. So, the first one, I think, I'm a big proponent of making adjustments to the plan and tweaking. It's kind of like what we talked about with airplanes. They're constantly making minor course
Mm-hmm.
corrections, or else you won't end up at your destination if they just left the autopilot on. There's weather, wind, all kind of reasons why they make these course adjustments. So I think part of that is in part of your planning, thinking about where the market's going. Are you starting to see things that are starting to shift that maybe you can be ahead of that, where it just doesn't smack you upside the face at the end of Q1 when the numbers and things aren't where they want to be? And how do you monitor some of that and make course corrections throughout the year? I think that's really the key is don't set the plan in October, November, and come hell or high water, we're just going to keep going with this. If all signs point to that's not where the market's going, you should make the corrections along the way, or else you're probably going to be teed up to have a really bad 2023.
Yeah, that's overrated.
It is. Now the other one is kind of interesting that you had mentioned. What if where you're taking your business and someone else wants to see you go a different direction? Um, that one's actually a really interesting to me for a couple things. So I think if it's someone that thinks that there's an additional product or service that you should offer,
Uh-huh.
uh, what I always tell people is spend some time piloting the idea first to see, one, is there a market?
Yeah.
Two, what would you charge for it? Is there anyone that would pay that for that? What are the competitors or other things, or what are the challenges you would have launching that service? And then I think the other thing with that is if all signs point to yes, that this could really make sense. I know this will probably make you cringe a little bit. I would put together a pro forma. Okay, how long would you be willing? Yeah, you knew where I was going with this. How long would you be willing to eat cost if this thing took a month, 2 months, 6 months, 8 months to get going? How much money are
Yeah.
you willing to put into something before it just isn't viable? Or maybe it's not that it wasn't viable. Maybe you were ahead of your time for the market because it's something new
Actually,
that
Jeff, yeah, that's a really good point. I know that you think I'm cringing from that standpoint. It's not that I've ever created a pro forma. It's just that you create much better pro formas than I do. So, I mean, let's just phrase it this way. I have the ideas, you make them real on paper. That's yeah,
yeah. And,
and we
sometimes
do what
it's
we're good at. It's
that's right.
and it's not that I can't create a pro forma, nor that I've never done one. It's that that's not the first thing I'd choose to do with my time.
Yep.
But
It's training.
you're absolutely right. Doing a pro forma is really smart, and knowing, okay, I'm giving myself a 1 month runway. To be perfectly honest with you, from everything that I've ever seen, a 1 month runway is probably a little on the unrealistic side.
Yep.
But a 6 month runway, yeah, that's if you've got a 6 month runway and you're not where you want to be in 6 months, then you really need to do some serious considerations. And maybe at 3 months, you not maybe, and at 3 months, you need to be looking at it and going, do I need to tweak something here? Is this still realistic? What do I need
Yep.
to
Yeah.
do?
And the other thing I would say is if someone's trying to push your business in a different direction, you know, I always tell people take that with a grain of salt. And some of this might be me being a little bit cynical, but part of it is, why is someone telling me to do this, right? Is the market really shifting, or is there some underlying thing here, right? Is the person moving into the market? Is it that they want to chip away at the client base that I currently have? I think it's some of those. If you've got someone pushing you really hard in a direction that you've not gone in and trying to get you to wholesale kind of replace what you've always been doing, if it's been successful, if it's something that's been flopping for 8 months and you've got someone really pushing you to go a different direction, maybe there's something else there in the market that's a
Right.
better,
Yeah.
but if your business is successful, you're happy with where it is, or offering additional services. I've seen this before where people get hung up in, well, it's another revenue stream. Okay, it could be, but how does it fit with whatever your core business is of what you're doing? You don't want to add something on that doesn't really relate, and then it almost becomes a distraction to the business that you've been building. If it's just this
That's
odd bolt on thing that doesn't, the two things don't go together.
right. And that's so important because just because somebody else sees that your business could do X, that doesn't mean that your business for that your sorry, that your vision for your business going forward has to include what somebody else sees as being a possibility. If it's a possibility, great, but is it the right possibility? Maybe
Yeah,
it's a direction you don't want to go in with your business, and it's your business, not theirs. So, I mean, weigh it, but like you said, take it with a grain of salt. And I got to say that this has been good stuff, but I know that you had a tool that you were talking about bringing to the table today, and I don't want us to lose sight of that because we got 4 minutes left. Not to
I
pressure
know.
you or anything.
It's one of those that time goes by so fast when you're having fun, and every time that we do these, it seems like we just it goes by so very quick as
I
we're
know
getting
that's
in and
true.
talking about all these things. So yeah, one of the things that we have from last week, so I'll start there, is just a quick one pager that folks could use that really kind of recaps what we've done last week, which was, what do you start doing? It's just a quick worksheet to kind of keep everyone, I'll call it everyone, honest on, the start, stop, continue on what should we start doing, what should we stop doing, what should we continue to do into next year, which really starts to lead towards this plan. And then we've got another one around for this week around, the what things went well, what goals and targets were met or missed for last year, or 2022 in this case. Brainstorming around different things that you can do, and as you start to build out the plan. And these worksheets are just quick, one page, they're not super involved, but things to help you jot down thoughts around this planning so that you can have a pretty solid plan going into next year. I always, in my corporate America days, it used to drive me crazy when we didn't have people's objectives together. So people didn't know what the hell they were going to do or what was expected on January 1st. And then it's like, oh, we got to put them into the system by Q1. Well, by Q1, the quarter, a fourth of the year is done, and you're just now telling people what to expect or what their plan is for the year. Like, that's absurd to me. So don't be that person. If you own a business, get your plan together, communicate to your team what the plan is, what the goals are, how they fit in, their objectives, and have it done by January 1st. We owe that to our teams if they're going to help us deliver on our vision for our business and where we want to go. We owe it to them to let them know what north and what good looks like in the next year.
That is so important, Jeff. And as you were talking about that, I was just picturing having an end of the year holiday celebration where you celebrate with your team the things that you've accomplished in 2022, and you lay out for them the goals, the plans, the aspirations, whatever word you want to use for it, whatever word your culture and your company is. This is where we want to go in 2023, so that they go into the holidays knowing where we're going as a company, and they can come back after January 1st celebrating and being ready to hit the ground running for where you're going to go.
Yeah.
that whole, doing the objectives and rolling up the goals and all that stuff. Oh my God, that used to drive me nuts in corporate. It's very necessary. I understand why we do it. I mean, you and I were both in major corporations where the rolling up of the goals was just like, oh, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But and it's even more important in a small company to be able to say, this is where we're going. Here's how what you do is going to impact us being able to get where we're going. Get that buy-in, empower them to do what they can do, free them up to contribute at the highest level for that. Excuse me while I get on my soapbox about that one. But really, every one of the people on your team, if they understand, hey, this is where we got to this year, and here's where we want to go next year, they're going to be all in.
Absolutely. And I think it makes a world of difference. And even if you're a solopreneur, do it for yourself. You owe
Yes,
yourself a roadmap, a plan for 2023 so that you don't spend the first quarter, 2 quarters of the year spinning on what you're doing overall. That's just, it's not fair to you as a business owner. So take this quarter really to elevate yourself above the forest, to be able to see the trees through the forest, so to speak, and have that plan and that clarity going into next year on where you're at and where you need to go. I think that
absolutely.
is so critical, and there's no better time than getting it done before the holidays, which is why we kind of teed this up in October into early November. So before the holidays, everything's done. And Adele looks like joined as well and said, create excitement for the new business year. Absolutely. What a great
What
way
a
to.
great way to phrase it. Yeah, you better believe it. That's cool. Thanks, Adele, for putting that in there. Um, so, Jeff, you mentioned the two pieces that we've done so far. If people DM either you or me, we can get that to them.
Yep.
We'll by the time we're done, we'll have an entire, won't be fancy, but it'll be a planning process that people can go through. So we'll have that they can get at the end of this, but we're adding two.
Yep.
So please, if you'd like to have those two pieces, DM Rhonda Peterson or DM Jeff Hire Jones, and we will get that over to you. Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, it was a great discussion.
Well, we
Even
finally got on.
Yeah,
Sorry,
even
folks.
tech challenges again. But I will not see you next Monday because I'll be on vacation. But Rhonda and her guest Teresa with the real life process will be here. So still in the process, and the process annual planning process. We're still kind of continuing that on. So
Right.
I'll be back on October 31st, I think is the following Monday.
Are you going to be like dressed in your Halloween costume? I'm just asking.
I don't know. Maybe I should just Halloween costume on because my favorite thing to do before we go live, as the countdown comes on, is to make faces at Rhonda to try and get her laughing. So when we go live, she's just, cackling, and I'm just sitting here smiling like there's nothing going on. But it hasn't worked because the countdown doesn't go quick enough. But
Yeah, that's true.
maybe I will have to do that. Think about
Oh
doing
boy,
that next
things to
time.
look
So
forward to. Okay.
yeah, I will
Well,
see everyone in 2 weeks, and Ron and Teresa will be here next Monday to talk about the real life
absolutely.
process.
Okay. Take care. Have a great week. Jeff, have a great vacation. See you next week,
Yes,
folks.
thank you. Yeah, see
We
you
will get
guys.
our we will get our technology together by next week. All right. Take care.